Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the latest in the series of Through the Essex Ages. And I want to say, firstly, a thank you to Cloud FM, who are kindly supporting this series of events. So, welcome to everybody, and just to go through a few house rules this evening, just to let you know, everybody will be, apart from the panel, of course, but all the audience will be muted through the evening event to make sure we've got clear communication with the panel. We've got some pre-submitted questions which I'll run through during the course of the evening. But if you'd like to ask, I'd encourage you to ask some questions. There's a Q&A function which I'd like you to use. Don't use the chat function if you want to ask a question. The chat function is there, and if you've got some feedback for the event or technical problems, then please use that, because we've got a team sitting there behind here, the technical team who are helping to support us this evening. Also, just to let you know, we'll try and get to all your questions. If there's anything that you feel is not answered this evening, then just send us an email or drop us a message, and we'll try and get back to you afterwards. So we'll also be recording the event this evening, so this will be available on the website in the coming days. And hope you enjoy the evening. And just a reminder that next week we've got another Q&A session that's looking 2010 onwards. So that's gone through the basic house rules for this evening. So I think I'll just quickly introduce the panelists to you this evening. I think they don't need any introduction really, but going around the table, as it were, James Middlebrook. Evening, James.
Evening, Mike.
Andre Nel. Good evening, Andre.
Hello, Mike. How are you doing?
Good, thank you, Andre.
Good.
Jason Gallian.
Hi, Mike. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. And last but not least, Will Jefferson.
Hi, Mike. Evening.
Hi, Will. Great. Okay, so looking at panelists tonight, we've got quite an eclectic mix, really, of former great cricket players who've been at Essex various periods of times, and some overlap, some didn't during the noughties. So I think before we go into any of the detailed questions, I think it'd just be good for everyone to just hear, what was your story? How did you find yourself at Essex? And so I guess I think let's start with you, James. I think it goes back to 2002, I think. So just how did you get to Essex?
Well, obviously, you'll probably know I'm a Yorkshireman, probably for the wrong reasons, being tight or got a win, thing like that, flat cap. So I played for Yorkshire from sort of 96 from the academy, sort of in and around the 2000, 2001, and being a guy called Richard Dawson was obviously fighting for one spot. Played a handful of games. 2001 won the championship with Yorkshire, knowing Paul Gray quite well through connections, and sort of my dad knowing Graham Gooch a little bit. The ball got bullied. The winter of 2001 sort of asked me to come and join Essex, so I joined in the winter 2001, 2002. Sort of a ball from there for my Essex.
Right. Well, actually, just following on from that, looking around at some of the players around at Yorkshire at that time, I think you played with quite a few players who ended up at Essex one way, shape or form.
Well, obviously the main one was obviously Darren Gough, but there's Paul Grace, and obviously from the Red Rose was Ronnie Irani. But I played with a few decent cricketers back in the time at Yorkshire, and it was a tough squad to sort of break through. And Dawson was sort of playing a little bit of England at the time. I think he broke thumb that year, so I played 6 or 7 championship for one-day games. So I thought I knew I could sort of, play with the best cricketers and play first team cricket. Never really got a full do that, and Essex sort of took a bit of a maybe calculated one, I don't know, but an option, and I didn't let them down.
Okay. Well, Chris Silverwood and Anthony McGrath around when you were at Yorkshire.
Yeah, I basically grew up with Mags. He's a year older than me, so the scholarship cricket, played local club. He played for a club called East Biley. So against him with Pussy Kongs, and Chris Silverwood did play for Pussy Kongs in our first team when I did go play for Pussy. So yeah, no, one or two lads gone down very well for me.
Good. We might explore that connection a bit more, the Yorkshire-Essex connection a bit more going forwards. Will, let's move on to you next. So, because I think you joined, you started playing around the same time as James, I think, for Essex.
Yeah, I think it was maybe a couple of years before. My journey sort of through age group cricket was all in Norfolk. Grew up in North Norfolk and sort of played for all the junior teams there. And a memory I have was of playing against Essex, I think, in an under-17 game, and we played at a little outground called Ingham, and John Childs was the coach at the time of the under-17 team, and Norfolk under-17s had a particularly good day. We got 300 and bowled Essex out for 150, so I think sort of scoring 100 helped my cause in getting a trial. Off the back of that, I think John picked up the phone to whoever was the second team coach at the time and said, worth sort of having a look at this guy. And so that was a sort of good memory. And I played a couple of second team games for Essex, and I'd actually also been offered an opportunity with Northampton as well. I remember trialling in the second team there and playing with the likes of Devon Malcolm and a very strong second team sort of unit. And the decision really was decided, I guess. Keith Fletcher was involved in Essex and really saw and had sort of taken on board the county's success sort of through the late 90s and that sort of feel-good factor, I guess. So yeah, signing a 2-year contract. I then disappeared off to Nelly's land, had 6 months out in Paarl in South Africa with a bit of sun on my back, and kept in touch with Chazzy, who was a huge influence in those early years. And then sort of, I guess, started my career dually really with playing at Durham University. So I'd sort of pack up my bags at the end of sort of term and try and get down to Essex as quickly as I could, and miss my graduation because I was on the pitch playing a 4-day game, I think, down against Gloucestershire.
Oh, great. Okay, well, moving on then. You mentioned Andre Nel there in that. So, Andre, yeah, I don't think you're very often dwarfed by anybody in terms of height, but I think moving certainly compared with Will, you are.
Yeah, no, he's the tallest opening batter I've ever played against and seen. So, yeah, I struggled with his length. But
so, how did you find yourself at Essex then, Andre?
Yeah, I sort of played a bit of cricket for South Africa, and somehow Ronnie Rani was the captain at that stage, and he thought I'll bring something different to Essex, I suppose, and joined them in 2003. Played the 3 seasons with Essex, and then I moved on to play a few more games for South Africa in that period. So it wasn't a full season; it was short little bursts the whole time, and so that's how I ended up at Essex. And I loved my time there. They really looked after me, and I made some real good friends that I'm still in touch with. Me and Brookie speaks probably once a week, and he's still good at staying in touch. And it's always nice to see the old guys you played with. And it seems like you got an unwritten bond, and you don't have to speak to the guys every day. You see them once in a blue moon, and still like old friends, and you can talk about anything. And that's what you always enjoy, and that's what you sort of find at Essex, a real family club. And that's sort of that's how I found my way to Essex. And I'm fortunate enough now to be back at Essex again and trying to hopefully pass some knowledge on to some of the guys. And it went well last year, so hopefully may continue as long as possible.
Great, wonderful. Thanks, Andre. I'll come back to your current role soon, I'm sure. And so last but not least, I think I'll try to do it chronologically. I'm not quite sure about when you made I've probably got that all wrong. Jason, yeah, so how do you find yourself at Essex, Jason?
Yeah, so I suppose I came in as the elder statesman after spending a number of years at Nottinghamshire. The truth of the matter is that I was looking to stay at Nottinghamshire, and they offered me a 1-year contract. And Ronnie, who I'd played under 19s against, I was playing for Australia, he was playing for England, and we both played for Lancashire. And then Ronnie moved, and I moved to Notts. So we sort of stayed in touch as good mates. And they said, "Look, don't worry about it. We'll show some interest, and Notts will give you the 2-year deal." And that didn't happen from Notts. But during that time, Ronnie retired injured. Andy Flower, I think, went as the England coach, and Darren Gough also retired down to injury. And Ronnie came back and said, actually, we do need you. We need someone to come in and show some experience in the top order and help our young guys out. And there was a young captain, Mark Platini, who had taken over, and we really hope your experience and guidance on that. And I thought it was a great challenge. And after finishing the captaincy and Stephen Fleming taking over, winning championships at Nottinghamshire, it was a new challenge I was looking forward to, and thoroughly did.
Okay, thanks, Jesse. Yeah, I'm looking at a picture from that era, and you've got the likes of, Middlebrook, Chopra, Wesley, Tendo. They're all there, yeah. So you were helping to get these guys up to speed, yeah.
Well, I think it was just, obviously Graham Gooch was around, and as he put it, he could help the guys off the field, but needed someone on the field, certainly in the 4-day stuff, to talk to the guys about playing the game and the intricacies of it all, and the tactics of how to play and I suppose be successful.
I think that's brilliant, Gal, because I think it makes a big difference to guys to play with experienced guys on the field, and sometimes it's been taken for granted that you go over the age of 30, 35, and now you're old, you have to retire, and you can't bring any value anymore because they say you're too old, and they actually miss out on the opportunity to learn such intricacies with batting on the field. And I think Jason played a big part in that stage with the guys even playing now still. It's strange, I've played with them now, I'm coaching them, it's slightly different, but you made a real big difference to them, I think, back then, and they're reaping rewards now, really.
I know when Gal came, we were probably looking a little fragile for experience to see the ball off. And I can remember Gal, always wore a few on the glove. They did Trevor, but he just sort of the lads a way around to go about it and how to manage a tricky first hour or a tricky half hour or tricky first spell. And it just helped us sort of grow confidence. And I think that sort of confidence did grow into our white ball cricket. I know Gal mainly came for football, played quite a bit of white ball, Gal in 50 overs. So it sort of gave him life as well to play good cricket in 50 over cricket, as well as teaching probably a little bit our young lads the way to go about it, both on and off the field.
Okay, great. Well, let's just move on now. Thanks for the introduction. Let's just focus a bit on some of the competitions to start with. Actually, we've got a few questions here. So we'll come on to white ball in a minute, but let's look at the red ball, because we had a bit of success with white ball during the noughties. A question from Mike Stringer here saying we were promoted 3 times during the decade, 2000, 2002, 2009, and each time we were relegated the next season. So why did the panel think we struggled to stay in the top division? I'll throw that open to you guys.
Well, I was a part of the 2000 promotion and obviously a part of the 2003. We're probably a bit Steve naive regarding batting long periods, and we did miss that sort of experience, maybe middle order. Relying heavily on the Flowers and the Iranis, and I don't think the other lads sort of realised that first it was a lot different back then, and I think it counted umpires. So I think we're just a little bit caught in the headlights a little bit. Personally, from my experience, and I obviously don't know about the 2010, but I know looking at my career, I was quite in 2003. I just think we wasn't probably mentally prepared for the change up, and you get 4 quality bowlers in the first division, whereas sometimes you can get a bit of let off in the second division with the 3rd and 4th change. So we probably just weren't prepared mentally, really.
Okay.
I think also you've got to look at. You saw Essex as sort of a bit of a yo-yo side, as you said, going up and down. But when they got into the first division, it's about sometimes eking out draws and getting those bonus points that other sides were sort of, I suppose, more hungry to get. And somewhere like Essex Chelmsford Ground was a really good opportunity to certainly capitalise on bonus points. The wicket was always a very good wicket, so it was probably trying to get as many bonus points and draws as possible to begin with a view to then hopefully winning games. Does sound a little negative, but that's sort of how First Division was played then, where guys were making teams were making big scores, trying to bowl sides out, and then they'd look for the win. So they'd hopefully negotiated their bonus points and then hopefully try and maximise with a win. If not, then they'd get a draw.
I think the wicket's changed a lot now. We struggled to get 300 in one innings, especially in the first innings. So the wicket has changed a little bit now. It goes around slightly more. But Gal, you made a really good point. That's for bonus points. You almost play to survive. It sounds negative. You play to survive and get your bonus points, and then you go for wins almost after that. So I think it's a very good point, Gal.
I think a memory I have as well was we played Sussex a couple of times, I think, in those seasons, and just remember how strong they were at that period. I think they won the championship. It was very much the sort of era of Peter Moores taking over as head coach. Chris Adams was captain. And I just remember playing them a couple of times, and Mushtaq Ahmed, I think, took 100 wickets in a season, maybe twice in 3 seasons. And their consistency and their, I guess, backing their strengths. They had Kirtley and Lurie, and they had Pryor and Ambrose. Sort of one was keeping and one was yapping away at short leg, and they just kept coming at you. And I think we had a lot of talented players. We didn't necessarily keep that consistency up for long periods of time. And the benchmark at that point was Sussex, I think, won it, and we were getting relegated. And the gap was in that sort of having that fight and that consistency to keep it going session after session, from what I recall.
Remember when Andy Flower brought in the session by session little tick box?
Yeah.
We sort of, if in first division, if you do lose a session, that can lose the game. As always, Stuart Broad getting 3 wickets in 12 balls the other day. So even though that didn't win the game for England, it sort of put a seed in the West Indies' mind that they're coming at us. I think sometime we did lose probably the 3rd day, maybe the first morning of the 3rd day, we lose the session, and then you're always playing catch up, or you are struggling to get that drawn. It was just, I just think a bit young, probably wasn't ready for it. And I think when Andy Flower brought in the tick box of winning sessions, and we broke it down to a bit more simple strategies rather than going, right, we'll go for the win, and if we lose, but I think you need to break it down into hours and sessions, really, personally.
I think that helped prevent a bit of complacency as well. You realise that if you won the first 2, that 3rd session was just as crucial. And I can remember actually occasionally, I think once that had been introduced, we realised the importance of backing up 2 sessions with finishing the day really strongly. And I think that would have had an impact on our psyche at the time. I do remember that, Midders. Good recollection.
I think you were the only one who could number 1.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for that insight. That's good. Actually, sorry, just a little aside. I can't. This wasn't why you're at Essex, Jason, but I just mentioning Sussex there, Will, just reminded me of a bit of an unwanted record that I think you're involved with Sussex and Kent in 2005, Jason. Remind us what that was?
Yeah, I do. That's when we won the championship at Notts, wasn't it? That's the one.
It was.
Okay, yeah.
That was your wanted record. What was the one that was unwanted?
Run out twice and 199.
Yeah.
Oh, stinker.
How unlucky is that?
You must have had a bit of cramp by that stage as well, I imagine.
Yeah, the first one was definitely my fault. The second one was definitely Ely's fault, but he's still not having it.
Okay, thanks, guys. All right, well, let's just switch to the white ball record over that period. And actually interesting. Will, you I think you featured in Essex's first ever T20 match. Is that right?
Yeah, no, it would have been. I'm trying to recall because I remember we sort of played, I think, a bit of an inter-squad friendly, and it was just so difficult to judge, how to approach things. And looking back, obviously, this is however many years ago it was. I think I remember Tendo was bowling back in those days, and we played Graham Hick, I think, in a friendly match as well. I remember him beaming him, bowling a flat one, and he occasionally that happened with his bowling in the nets. That was a memory I had. And those early days of 2020, it was whether it was hit and giggle, it was certainly a lack of understanding of what it took to win games. And I know so much of it now is data driven and sort of who should bowl when at each individual. And that's, at that particular point in time, we were really having to sort of talk to each other about what we thought would work. And I think we lost 2 wickets in the first over of one of the warm-up games. I can't remember how our initial matches went in those early times, but it was definitely a case of, I think we used Napes as a pinch hitter quite a lot, didn't we, Midders? Did you?
I think so.
Early days, he had such a good eye, and we sort of threw him in and thought, well, if you can smash 30 off 10 balls, then give it a go. And occasionally he did, but occasionally he didn't as well.
Did Wheater get 100 in one of the first few games, or was that the year after, Jeff?
I think he was at Cambridge. I think we played against him a few times.
Really 16-year-old, and he got like maybe an 80 or 100 against the Sussex at Chelmsford. He just give it licks, didn't he? And it was, I think, when Ronnie O'Rani was talking to us about T20, it was a bit like, well, this will phase out type of thing, but we've got to play. Was it Sussex Derbyshire lights?
Was it what?
Was it us, Sussex and Derbyshire, that had lights? So it was us three that played it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it was basically just like a bit of we were like guinea pigs for the game. I remember using a pink ball, which was quite hard to see when it came at sort of chest height. I couldn't really pick it out of the background, but I do remember the T20 trial game.
Goffey put himself in the top 3 as well, didn't he? Backed himself to hit it out the park.
All right. Well, look, another question from Mike String here, actually. So, why does the panel think it took us so long to win the T20, especially as we won 3 other one-day trophies during the decade?
Go on, Will.
I think in the we played some 40 over cricket, didn't we? I remember we won a competition that time, and I have a recollection that Goffey, when he arrived, he sort of said, "I've arrived at Essex because I believe this squad can win stuff." And then we did win, I think, that first year, and he had such a impact on the belief within the squad, and wanted to back those words up with really sort of having a trophy at the end of the season. I remember it being a bit odd going from 50 to 40 and then I think back to 50. I wouldn't be able to put my finger on why we struggled to win the 2020 or sort of get consistent in that format. Maybe we were, I remember speaking to Paul Nixon at Leicester, because they were doing so poorly in 4-day cricket. They set aside extra time and really put all their focus and all their eggs in the 2020 basket. And I think they did win the first ever session, but he said they were practicing long hours, for a couple of weeks before the first game. They'd sit, they'd practice and they'd sit around for 3 or 4 hours just talking tactics and everything. And I think they were possibly a bit more clearer in their thinking and their approaches and their routines and things than maybe we were. And they got ahead of us, by doing that. But maybe we were fighting on another front or two. I think it was always tricky to fight on every front all the time. Maybe that was a reason that a couple of other teams really sort of honed in on their tactics and their strategy. And I remember Darren Maddy was awesome, wasn't he, when he was at the top of the order, and he was brilliant in those early years. And Leicester seemed to just find a formula pretty quickly, and other teams then potentially started to copy that formula. I remember they used to put their slowest, tallest fielders, Nelly, like you and I, in the ring rather than right out on the boundary. And that was, you're a big unit. We can't move side to side so quickly. So we would actually be at backward point where you'd normally have your very best fielder in 4-day cricket. So that type of thinking was just one step ahead of us, maybe at the time.
Was it 2005, Jeff, when we won the Pro 40 that we 14 games and won 13, and rained off the 14th? And for me there, we had a very good mixture. Obviously, we had Andre Nel, Andre Adams.
Thanks, Brookie. I actually did play a little bit, but then I left to play with South Africa eventually.
For me,
a different Andre.
We had very experienced, as in Grant and Andy Flower. For me, they were. Well, Grant was phenomenal with white ball. He just
after Habib, he played a bit, didn't he?
I've got a picture in my downstairs toilet. That's the only picture. I just remember that we had a young Bopar, a young Tendusgarter, but we also had the old heads that we spoke about earlier of the Flowers and the Goff, and it had just a great mix of young and old. And we had, and I think Andy Flower, Grant, and Goffey all three of them sort of gave us all belief that we could win. And I think a bit like Jeff, we did focus a lot on the longer format of the white ball cricket, and we sometimes just thought we were unbeatable. And that year we were unbeatable. Everybody knew their own role. Knew if right, I'm going to bat 40 overs, you're going to bowl the last 10 overs, whatever it is. So we all knew our role in the team, and it just seemed to work that year. So I'm not sure why the shorter format, but I think Jeff touched on it earlier. We did try pinch hitters, but Darren Maddy wasn't a pinch hitter. He was a calculated cricket, and he played some great shots. But he was also very good running between the wickets. You know, T20 is all about fours and sixes, but I remember Tendon, they'd turn ones and twos into threes, and running between the wickets became a big key in T20. Mind hitting the big boundaries. So they just knew their game plan down to a T, as Jeff was commenting earlier, with the fielders in certain positions, batters in certain, like Nico would be a great one, and Jeff Nape, I remember him. He bowled very well in the middle overs, and then obviously batted well at the
Okay, right. Well, Andre, actually, just in reference to T20, so I remember watching you play some fearsome bowling, and it always used to worry me at Chelmsford that any little nick was going to go for six off the bat, you know, when you were bowling. But you returned on some occasions after your spell with Essex. I think you came back with Surrey.
Yep, I did.
Being reminded by someone that in 2010 it ended with Scott Styrish smashing sixes around the ground. You know, what was it like coming back as an opposition player?
Yeah, I suppose it's slightly different. Like, I always enjoyed Essex because the way they treated me, and they looked after me quite well. So it was good, and I enjoyed it there. But yeah, it was nice coming back. I still remember the game specifically. I was feeling, I think, at Cow Corner, and I think a few guys had a few too many beers, and someone was starting to get quite racial at that stage about some funny comments. And I'll never forget that I got over the fence and went in to chase this guy, and eventually they called me back and said, listen, let's just focus on cricket. But yeah, I was going back. I always enjoyed playing here. We did lose the game, but like I said, I'm fearsome on the field, but I try to be quite chilled and laid back on the field, and I made some real good friends at Essex, and that will never go away and always stay like that. And yeah, so I enjoyed coming back. I always enjoy going back to anywhere I play, because I try to take the time to meet the people and stay true to them. But my character on the field and off the field is quite a big difference. So I quite enjoyed coming back.
Okay, Jason. A couple of people have pointed out some of your remarkable appearances in the Friends Provident Trophy in 2008, if you can remember that. There was a game at Derby. Lorna Piper said, do you have any memories of the 150 plus unbroken partnership with Ravi? And she also notes that James, you took 4 catches in that match.
For me, no, not really. What I do, as James said, that when I did come for a couple of seasons, that it certainly, I suppose, re-energised me in all forms of cricket, and certainly one was white ball, where I could, I suppose, open the batting, sort of knock it round and play the way I played, with such young, fantastic, dynamic players around me. You've already mentioned someone like Ravi, who came in and could take the game away at a moment's notice. And there's Grant Flower, there was Ryan Tenderskada, who could also do that. But what was really interesting for me about that period of time was that there were guys who knew their roles. So even someone like Mark Patini at the top of the order, he'd come in and he'd just take players on in a 50 or 40 over game or 20 over game. And that was his job, and he did it. We know Napes did fantastically well when he got a 150. And again, you just sat back and watched him play. And then when you got onto the bowling, you had Midders holding an end up, you had Danish taking wickets, you had there was lots of guys there who knew their roles, and we could put a plan in place to be successful. So on a personal note, no, I don't really remember much of the individual stuff. But I do remember that was as a unit playing really well in the white ball.
Okay, well, you mean you've even forgotten that you are still the current record one-day first wicket partnership holder, along with you mentioned Mark T in there. So 269 against Surrey at the Oval.
Yeah, that was again. It's sort of. It's not. It was good. It was a good day. It was a really interesting day, but it's nothing that I really aspire to. Just as long as we win the game, which we did comfortably, and that was really important when Essex plays Surrey. Well, anyone plays Surrey.
Yeah, that's very true.
Okay, all right. We've had a few. I've got to turn to James again now. James, we've had a few questions in similar, certainly coming from Anthony Mercer, Ian Sinclair, and there's others, I believe, as well. Just very interested. Obviously, you've become first-class umpire now, past 2 or 3 years, I think. So, how are you finding your new role, and how does it compare with being a player?
Well, I'm enjoying the new role. Certainly don't wake up with any niggles or aches and pains in the morning. Every day is a fielding day, so you can't be too many red wine deep the next day if you've got to concentrate at 11 o'clock. I do miss the team environment, travelling together on the bus or hotels, going out for bite to eats, and just sort of talking with fellow colleagues. Yeah, nice. Most of the umpires are top lads around the circuit, but it's not the same when you've got 11, 12 other doctors. So you are sort of a smaller team. I'm a bit like Andre and probably Gal and Jeffo. When you do go to other places, you see familiar faces and players that you did play against that are now in coaching roles, and it's quite interesting to sort of say how good we were in the years compared to now cricketers. But I love my new job. I should have probably done it a little bit earlier rather than carrying on, but I do miss the team sort of unity, and I know the years at Essex were quite fruitful, both on the field and off the field.
Okay, so great. So, Will, tell us a little bit more about your time at Essex and some of the most memorable things that you achieved there.
I think winning the trophies stand out, and obviously when we got promotion, there was always a feeling of the hard work and the yards we'd put in over the course of a whole season, coming to fruition. I guess there was the disappointment of going back down again on those 2 occasions. I think from a personal point of view, scoring runs in front of the home crowd at Chelmsford are sort of really good early memories for me. There was a game against Notts where Mark Waugh, the Aussie Mark Waugh, not the Warwickshire and Notts Mark Waugh, had come over and played for us. And I think as a player in the early stages of my career, to get to play, I think he came to play for us for about 6 weeks. To bat with him on a number of occasions and sort of be down the other end to him was something very, very special. And I think we put on 130 or 140 in one knock, and just sort of, watching him go about his work and obviously practicing in the days leading up, but he was so consistent, when he performed for Essex, and he had an aura about him as well because of what he'd done, I think, for the club, years before that. And then he'd obviously gone off, I think, and scored however many 6,000 or 7,000 test match runs as well. So there was some particularly sort of happy memories from those early years. And I think another standout was the day where I batted against Hampshire at the Rose Bowl when Shane Warne was captaining them, and just the fact of sort of thinking of the players in our team, and I think I opened with Paul Grayson, and Aftab Habib would have been playing, Andy Flower, James Foster, Andre Adams, and so I got to bat with, I think, nearly everyone on that first day, and put in some partnerships with Andy and with Fozzie down the order. But just the fact that we won that game in 3 days, we bowled particularly well, and I remember just the vibe amongst the guys in the field, taking those wickets, and they had Michael Clarke in their team as well. So we played some brilliant cricket, and it was it sort of felt like a typical Essex performance, really sort of taking the fight to them and rubbing it in their noses and winning with a day to spare and going out and celebrating afterwards. And yeah, those are the particularly sort of happy standout memories that I've got.
That's one thing we did really well, Essex, is celebrate our wins. And we still do it now, though. So it's good.
Absolutely. It was something that Andy Flower spoke about, and I think his frustration at times was how condensed the fixture list was that you had to turn your attention to the next game and couldn't necessarily take that window as much as you would like, just to talk through what the team had done well and sort of really enjoy that victory. And I remember in those early days, we'd sort of pop round to the pub near the ground and quite often drink with the opposition. I think one night of the 4-day games, and mix and mingle with the opposition. And it was very much that era that was starting to go out of the game a bit. And I think I'm looking around my other panelists here, they were sort of great times, you know, with the opposition, and they're some of the happiest memories as well, the friends you make in the opposition as much as your own teammates as well.
Can I just ask you a question, Jeff? Or do you remember your 100 at Colchester in the white ball against a young, fast Sean Tate?
I remember he bowled a lot of no balls that day. Didn't he bowl 16 or 17 no balls?
I think you kept winding him up because you were playing his bouncer off your front foot.
I think Nixon McLean, that happened to him as well down at Taunton.
That was one of the standout memories I have of you, Jeff, at Colchester, when you just took Sean Tate, who was bowling, I would say 90 mile an hour, and PG at the other end was hopping around on a tin roof, and you just kept playing him off the front foot, one bounce over his head to the side screen. I must admit that was one of my fondest memories of your knocks. And then I think you got a big 180 at Chelmsford and you ran off, and my dad sort of gave you a little bit of telling off.
Gave me a ticking off, yeah. He told me to soak it in, I think. And well, it's a great feeling walking up those steps with everyone standing and clapping. And I've forgotten about Sean Tate because there's a few quick bowlers around at that time, because Shoei played for Pakistan, and Steve Harmison was pretty quick in his pomp as well.
Did you play the game at Northants when John got wickets and Andy Flowers on the field for like every over apart from 4, because he kept got 100 both knocks?
He won us the game, didn't he? But he got 100 not out was he not out in both innings? Yeah, because we had he kept wicket as well.
We had to declare like 150 behind, didn't we? And then John Stevenson wobbled a few out, and did Mike Hussey play for France?
He might have done. Matt Hayden might have played for
Matt Hayden
at that time. Hussey definitely played as well.
And when you were touching on you couldn't celebrate, we had to get on the bus, didn't we, to go down to Sussex for the next day for a game next morning down at their outground. But that was my final memory of you, Jeff. I was planting shade into the river at Colchester.
Well, Will and James, you both played against a match against Australia in 2005, I think, which put one of our certain one of our players' name on the map. Will, you opened with Sir Alistair, I believe, on that day. So, what were your early memories of playing alongside him at that time?
I mean, I think the sort of feeling I had earlier in this conversation is that he came and went pretty quickly out of the Essex team, because he didn't play that many games before he was in the England setup. And my memories from that game particularly was, again, his ability to bat pretty much the whole of that day. I think he got 214 off the top of my head, and Ravi got 135. It was definitely one of the best wickets I've ever played at Chelmsford. It was a full house and obviously blue skies, so it was beautiful batting conditions. And to be honest with you, Brett Lee was not bowling his quickest, so there was, and they also put a man out on the deep cover boundary, I think in the second or third over, because I think they were experimenting, with leaving this gap open and drying the runs up. But we were rattling along, I think, at 6 and over in the first sort of hour. Two young guys, because I was 22 or 23, I think, and Cookie would have been 20. But just his determination to turn, I think I got out for 60 odd, to turn a start into a big 100, and then obviously, as Gucci would say, a daddy 100, and that really stuck out because, a double 100 against the Aussies. I remember Warren and McGrath were running the drinks, so yeah, pity they weren't playing. But and then I remember Hayden getting 150 the next day as well.
Okay. I'll just throw this one around the table as well, because I asked you there, Will, what's your most memorable performance at Essex? So this is asked by Jenny Heald. So guys, what are your most memorable? Andre, Jason, James?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I had a few, but it wasn't massive performances, but it's what I did in the games, like bowling a spell before lunch. So I got a few wickets and changed the game for us. And our first game coming to Essex, I'll never forget, I got to the ground, or got to the airport, and my bags didn't arrive. All my bags arrived except my cricket kit. So I got to the cricket ground, they arranged me some Essex boots. And I bowled a spell of 7 or 8 overs. So it's probably the quickest I've bowled in boots I never bowled in. I did pay for it the next day with my feet being in pieces. But those are small memories. The performances are hard to remember really. But smaller spells I bowled that changed the game fast. And then a spell I bowled with Gothy in the one-day game. Gothy coming down the hill, I'm coming up the hill, and we actually bowled, both those bowled pretty quick that game, and we took a few wickets up front and changed the game for us. Those little small things I can remember, but yeah, in general, it's hard to pick a specific performance that I did for Essex.
Guys, James, Jason, you said you already before you don't really remember them too. Have you got anything that stands out?
I suppose when you move clubs, you want to establish yourself, and I got a century in my first championship game. I think it was against Northants, so it was really nice personally to do that and be a part of the team. Highlights that year, I suppose, going to Lords and winning the Friends Provident in the 50 over. But actually, what a real fulfilling one was of all the places, Derbyshire in a championship match, and Mark Patini was injured. And I stood at slip with Alistair Cook, who was the designated captain who took over. And I think I was in first slip and he was in second. He said, right, well, what do I do? And I said, what do you mean, what do you do? He said, well, you've captained before. What do I do? I've never captained before. And I was like, you must have captained something, like under whatever. So I had the honour of, and he said he hadn't, so I had the nice little opportunity of a whole day of walking Sir Alistair Cook through his first championship captaincy situation and how he wanted to bowl these spells, what he felt in the fields and everything like that. So that was quite a nice opportunity, I suppose, as an older guy.
Okay. James, you must have got loads of memories. I mean, I was checking earlier. I'm not sure how many people realise you've got 10 first-class centuries to your name.
What?
Proper player.
It
Yes, today.
must have been playing against Andre at Surrey.
It must have been the second division.
I did touch on one or two of the games. I do think about this sometimes, and the game at Colchester when Jeffo was panning, and I'm not just saying that because Jeffo's on this call, but I remember playing there, and I had quite a lot of happy memories playing the Colchester week, especially the 4-day cricket, and then they played the Sunday game on the Sunday. I just remember the crowd being, when you walk through the galley and you walk from the dressing rooms and, 20, 30 yards to the actual outfield, it just felt quite at home, less formal than most of the campgrounds. And I enjoyed playing. Shame that I don't play there too much. And that game against was impressive. But I touched on it earlier, I think the most memorable 4-day cricket, and I would probably say that the guys on this call would probably appreciate 4-day cricket winning more than white ball. I remember playing against had a very good side. I think Hussey and Hayden may have been playing, or Hayden, and I dropped one of them at third slip off Mark Eilert for 13, and I think he got double 100. And just the admiration I had for Lara, who kept wicket in blistering hot conditions. I think they got 620. We declared at 500, and Ronnie said, we'll ball them out, and it's proper flat at Northants. And then John Stephen waved his magic wand, and then I think Jeffrey, you get a quick 60. You and Dan Robinson got a bit of a fly, didn't you? And chased down the total. And And I remember Andy Flower reverse sweeping, reverse pulling Jason Brown, and poor Brownie was just pulling his hair out, not having a clue of what answer he could do to Andy Flower. Then he'd paddle sweep him, he'd hard sweep him, he'd reverse sweep him, he'd hit him towards covers. And for me, that was just a 4-day victory. And I think it went to like 10-6 the last day. And just sort of winning a 4-day game on a very, very flat wicket was sort of most enjoyable, because it is 4 days graft rather than, it's great winning white ball cricket in the day, but 4-day cricket to me is still the pinnacle, just as Test cricket proved yesterday.
Okay, great. So Andre, just moving on to you now. Of course, you're back at the club, obviously, as a bowling coach, and so you're looking back over 10 years ago when you played there. So, what's your perspective now on the club, looking back then and looking to now, and how things have changed?
I think the big thing is still the same kind of atmosphere, a really family atmosphere. They look after the guys quite well. I think that's always stayed the same. That's what Essex is renowned for. But I think we've got a real nucleus of really good players. It's been local players, like Tom West has been here for a long, long time. He's playing here, Ted has been playing here for a long time. And we've got a real nucleus of really good batters that understands how to play the game properly in our bat long periods, understand and adapt to wonder cricket really well. Like Ted has played all over the world now with 2020 cricket. We had rugby last year, did a really unbelievable season for us last year, did so well with us. And then our bowlers is quite young, but really exciting. That's could have a nice future at Essex, because Simon Harbour does really well for us. He bowls a lot of overs, but yes, James Porter the last few years has taken a lot of wickets, and he sort of had an off season last season, and hopefully he can do really well this little small part of the season. So I think we just got a real good balanced side at the moment, with good, real experienced batters, with young bowlers that can sort of do a job for us, with Harvey doing the business with taking a lot of wickets for us. Hopefully we can. There's going to be a stage where the batters are going to step away, have to retire eventually. There's a few decent batters coming through that can fill those gaps, and I think that's a good thing with Essex. We look after local players and local talent, and that's the guys that are standing up at the moment. And there's a real good future for us in the next couple of years, hopefully.
Thanks, Andre. Talking of local talent, of course, Jason, I think you've got a bit of a role to play here at the club. How are you involved in all of that?
Well, current role is I'm in charge of cricket at Felsted School. Also involved on the Essex Cricket Board, looking at player pathways for junior cricketers. So, yeah, it's very exciting times to see the talent coming through and hopefully reaching Andre as professional at some stage.
Yeah, I think that's a big feature, and it's we often get asked around the circuit, how do Essex do it? And there's all these people around, like you, Jason, that are helping to find, source the talent and the whole system to bring these players to the fore. So
I think a big thing for us is, I think our board is brilliant. There's all ex-cricketers, real lot of knowledge. That you got Keith Fetcher, you got Gucci, you got Ronnie Roddy, you got Gull. There's a lot of knowledge and experience that they've done and achieved so much in cricket, and they sort of bring that back to us and try and bring the right people through. They still, Keith Fetcher's unbelievable. He's at almost every second team game. He goes to watch a lot of young cricket, under 14 and 15 cricket, and comes back with knowledge to us. Chaz, he's still involved with us, and he's been at the club for so long, and he does such a lot of work by scouting and going to see young players and bringing them to the club, to the academy. I think that's where it's been. Essex have been so fortunate. They've got real loyal and cricketers and cricket knowledge being put back into the youth, and I think that's going to always give us in good stead for the future, getting our depth a lot better with these guys involved.
So as a coach, is that important to you? Does that help motivate you?
Of course it is. It's always important to know that the board members know what they're talking about. Sometimes it's strange with board members. Sometimes haven't experienced as much cricket. They want to call the shots. And with these guys, you have to be on the spot and know what you're doing, because they will tell you if it's wrong or not. So it is important, I think, and it's important for you to do a really good job for them to acknowledge that. But it's important for us to bring our youth through and local guys through, and that's what we've been doing really well. And that's going to do us really good in the future. And like I said, our bowlers are all, I think, almost all local guys. You got Sam Cook, Beardy, Porter, they're all local guys, and they're really young. Beardy's 21, Cook is 20, 21, 22. You got Walters, it's 24. A lot of local guys are coming through, and that's going to be really good for us for the future. Even the academy guys now, there's a real good. I've been working with them in the winter, and there's some really good guys coming through. So it only can bode well for Essex for the future.
Great. Okay, look, let's just reflect. We're coming up towards our end of our time, so let's reflect back a little bit on the cricket side in the noughties again, and your careers. Will, you had quite a number of injuries during your career, didn't you? And you ended up leaving Essex 2006 after injuring yourself. So what happened basically? Yeah,
With that particular injury, or
well, that one, or and in general, as what led to you really curtailing your career probably earlier than most people would have thought.
Yeah, I guess looking back on it, I a little bit like Gal, I did experience different counties, and I think it was that curiosity for me at the time to sort of push myself and find a new challenge. And I look back on my time with Essex with incredibly fond memories, and I think there was just something for me sort of personally that I just wanted to get out of, not necessarily comfort zone, but just find a way of pushing myself in a new environment and within a sort of new culture as well. So I saw that as taking that opportunity when I did. I'd had a tricky summer that year. I'd happened to put my wrist through a window in my flat in Writtle, which was a slightly unusual, obviously, injury, and it nearly finished my career just sort of on that day. And I have Ryan Tenderscarter to thank for coming and picking me up from my house and driving me to the hospital. And Ronnie sort of kindly came and visited me in the hospital as well. And I missed the pre-season tour to South Africa. And I guess when you're injured, you do feel a little bit disjointed from the team and the squad. And for a few months, I was sort of nursing my wound and trying to repair myself, and never really, I think when I came back into the team, I think I got dropped after one game, and there was possibly a sense of needing a little bit more sort of a bit of a sort of long run at it. And that might have also sort of played a part in thinking that actually looking for pastures new would be the right thing for me to do at that particular moment in time. But yeah, I guess 26, 27, there was, the feeling that finding a new place to ply my trade was an opportunity I wanted to take at that moment in time.
Okay. Well, your best season at the club, 2004, you got over 1,500 first-class runs. Were you being touted around for a possible England spot at that point in time? Yeah,
a memory I have actually was of Nasser taking me to one side at Old Trafford. And there'd been a lot of noise in the press because of my height and the fact I'd been scoring some runs. And he said to me that the place in the test squad had come down to between myself, Jim Troughton and Anthony McGrath. So I sort of knew I was close. And Mags obviously bowled a few seamers and had been doing particularly well for Yorkshire and got the nod. And I think that moment in time sort of stuck with me because Nasser was a advocate in terms of me bringing something quite different with my height and sort of ball striking. And it was, I look back on it as that was without a doubt sort of my standout season across a 12-year career. And I sort of found myself in New Zealand. Thanks to Andre Adams, I picked up a gig sort of work as a player coach and had a fantastic time over there. But I did arrive sort of scratching my head thinking, 2,250 runs in all cricket. And I think I got 700s and 390s and sort of felt that I was worthy of at least a sort of a lion spot and an opportunity to see what I could do at a higher level. And then injury did curtail sort of future opportunities. So it was, looking back on it, I got close, but not quite close enough.
Yeah. Well, Jason, you did represent England, didn't you? I think you represent another country in your youth, didn't you?
Yes, that's right. So I said before I'd played for Australia in the 19s against Ronnie, and I think a young guy called, was it Keith Butler? I think his nickname was Billy Butler. Under 19s, he was also an Essex player. So that was quite an honour. But then I changed allegiances and played a couple of tests for England. Probably more infamously breaking my finger first test, and then having a go at the end of the series against the West Indies in whatever it was, and then got flown across halfway around the world to play a test in South Africa.
James, what about you? Any aspirations at any stage in your career you thought, yeah, I can get there?
Well, you don't play professional cricket just to play county cricket. You want to try and represent your country. And I thought I may have had a chance in white ball, sort of mid-2000s, but Ronnie did pull me aside 04, 05, saying sort of you're close. I think in a guy called Jamie Dalrymple, from Middlesex, and it never really sort of touched home that I was that close. I just tracked back, like Gal was saying, sort of went out to try and do the best I could and perform my role in the team, and then hopefully we get the victory. I wasn't too interested in personal stats. I'd always try and hit the boundary if we needed a boundary in that over, rather than making sure I was not out and rotate the strikes. So it was always team first, and that's what we had at Essex, was team first, and sort of personal accolades would come after that. So we all do our role, and I'd love to play for England, but it never really came to my front of my mind to do it. I just, I was happy to play county cricket and obviously win some trophies for Essex.
So while talking of winning trophies, obviously 2008 when Essex won the Friends Provident Trophy, I think a few of you were involved in the team at various stages. So what were your memories from that?
Oh, my personal memory was Ravi's 150 or maybe 200 at Leicester in the semi-final. As Jeff spoke earlier, Leicester just they knew how to play ball cricket with their side, and we played on a pitch at Grace Road that was absolute belting pitch. And I remember, did we get over 300, Jeff? Did you play that game? Or Gal, did you play that game?
Yeah, we did. No, he played beautifully.
He played, I think he got double 100. And I remember the last over, he said, I'm going to hit the guy onto the cricketers at the pub. And he literally did that next ball, like he knew where we were going to bowl it. So for me, the semi-final was sort of not our greatest victory, but it was a standout, complete team performance. Obviously an outstanding performance for Ravi, but they had people like who they just knew how to win games of cricket. We sort of showed them how to do it in their backyard, as it were. So for me, it was a semi-final victory at Leicester that I remember of that year.
Andre, you played. No, I didn't do it just because you're having a swig of. But you had to. I think,
cool drink.
You played in the group stages, didn't you, that year? But then didn't you have to get called up to play?
Yeah, I played indoors in that series, and then I went to play for South Africa. I think we actually toured England at that stage, if I can remember correct. But like I said, I can't remember some of the performances, but I was pretty happy to see the boys pull off and won the trophy that year.
Okay. Right. Well, look, time's going to defeat us quite soon, so we'll look to wrap up soon. We've had a question from someone called Anonymous Attendee.
This could be tricky. This could be tricky.
A retired railwayman from Whittam. He sometimes asks questions, but basically, how the guys got through lockdown? How have they coped?
That's good. Okay. There you go, Will.
I'm looking at Midders because I know he's got a 2-year-old in the house, and I've got a 4.5-year-old and 2-year-old. So we've had quite a busy time looking after those two. And my work these days is a lot of sort of working with teams and groups. So I've been very quiet for the first few months and getting quite used to this virtual way of working. But I think coping wise, I guess I've just sort of tried to put some routines in place, and I've taken up cycling. I've got probably the biggest bike in the world that gets me out and about. So I've been trying to rack up the miles and get out every sort of few days. And yeah, just actually opportunities like this, you know, reconnecting with people, having these types of experiences, a real sort of mood lifter, I think. And been fortunate, you know, to reconnect with people that I might not have spoken to for a while, and I think that's given us a sense of staying connected while we're sort of getting through this phase, and that's made a real difference.
Yeah, I think we've been all right. It's been hard coming from South Africa and living in an apartment for almost a year, just over a year, missing the space. But we went on pre-season tour. You sort of knew what was coming, and we came back earlier from pre-season tour, but we knew we could have had some season starting somehow. So trying to focus on that, trying to get some information about what the guys and where the guys can improve on, sort of kept us busy during lockdown. And then, of course, having a few beers at home and killing time is always enjoyable. I quite enjoy that part of cricket, so I'll make full use of that.
Jason?
Yeah, I haven't been as busy as Midder's working his trousers off, but I'm up in North Essex, so there's a bit of space up here. We've got a few byways and a bit of space, so there's certainly been a few bike rides, mountain biking, walking the dogs, getting out and about. But I think, you know, from where Jeffo was talking about, it's about keeping routine, and now we've got cricket back on. I'm a lot busier now, doing a lot more coaching and getting involved with clubs around the area.
Well, as Jeffo spoke, I've had a 2-year-old, and sort of the best thing of lockdown is being able to be at home. Obviously, with umpiring county cricket, you're never really at home. So seeing my little man develop has been sort of the blessing in this pandemic. But a lot of dog walking. I've got a little seat on back of my mountain bike, so me and the missus most days we're going out on the bike. Bit of Joe Wicks in the morning to keep the fitness going. So the day seems to sort of pass, and the next minute, you know, it's sort of 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you've got a Corona in your hand. So I think that sort of helped a few days pass by quite quickly.
Mike, sorry, just to interrupt a little bit. It's really interesting for us because, you know, certainly from my point of view, I've been in every summer. I've done cricket since I was 14 or 15, be it Australia, wherever, as professional cricketers. This is the first time actually that probably all of us on the panel have had a summer holiday, a summer break. We've never had that, and it's been refreshing. It's been very weird, but it has been quite refreshing to catch up with friends and family.
Yeah, it has been nice. I agree with you guys. It's nice spending extra time in the summer with the family. You don't really get as much catching up with friends. Yes, at lockdown it was hard seeing friends, but you still now can see some friends at the weekends that you didn't have before. Enjoying your braai vleis or barbecue that you normally had to do in the winter, now you can do it in the summer with your family. It's actually been quite nice. But you do miss it, and you can't wait to get going now. It's around the corner for us, and so I'm really excited to get going and get the season on the way. It might be shortened, and is shortened, but it's going to be awesome to get some cricket because none of us really expected to get any cricket, so we're really looking forward to it.
Great. Well, look, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this evening, and thanks to Cloud FM, who's kindly supported this series of events, has helped bring everybody together. And just for everybody's members who are listening, we'll be having the next one next Tuesday with the some players from the next decade on from you chaps. So I don't know if anybody got any parting comments or. No?
I'd just like to say that coming from Lancashire to Nottinghamshire and then obviously coming to Essex, all 3 clubs when I first started were all a really good club atmosphere, and certainly Nottinghamshire and Lancashire became stadiums. Coming to Essex for a couple of years and a couple of seasons back into a a real club family environment was so refreshing. And it's not the stadiums, it's the people that make it, and they're the most important. So the members who have been watching us rant on a little bit, and also the players and Mike, yourself, and the people who work behind the scenes. It's such a lovely atmosphere to be at, and you know, I wish them all the success for the summer.
Right, that's a lovely note to leave it, and I want to thank the members as well, because they make this club, helping the club great. You know, and Osman, Ronnie saying over the years, you know, they are very, very knowledgeable. You know, always. So we can't thank them enough. And Jenny Hill has just said, excellent guys, thanks very much to everyone for putting this on. So okay, good, thanks again guys, and cheerio to everyone.